And welcome to the US Travel Show with Ellery Wells and Christina Canters. Today we're talking about best states to live in.
Thank you for tuning into the Empowered Podcast today. I am excited to share this conversation that I'm about to have with my new friend, Christina Canters. She's from Australia. She lives in New York. Right now, I think she's in Berlin. She's internet famous for a really creative marketing video that she did for Pat Flynn. I'm excited to have her on the show and talk about how she can work from anywhere, traveling the world, doing what she loves. How are you doing today, Christina?
I'm doing great, thanks. I'm doing better now, especially after that lovely introduction. I'm totally honored to be on your show, so thanks so much for having me.
You are very welcome. And like I said, you are internet famous for these creative videos that you do for your podcast. And tell us again the name of your show and make sure I get it right.
Yeah, so my podcast is called Presentation Skills for Design Students. And it helps design students and young professionals become better communicators in order to help them succeed in their careers. So I help them with job hunting, job interviews, and moving up in the workplace and networking and that sort of thing.
That's awesome. And do you teach them how to do these crazy with what did you call them? When we talked the other day, you called them the hats.
So in a lot of the stuff that I talk about and that I teach and promote is how do you be creative with your communication? You know, how do you stand out from the crowd? So the stuff that I've been doing with my videos, that's not necessarily, I guess I'm kind of teaching by example, really, because the videos that I make are more to get guests on my show that I didn't think would respond to an email. So I've had to come up with creative ways of asking them to be guests. And for me, I sort of share that with my audience and I go, look, if you want to get in touch with someone with a company or with a person who's really successful or important or high up and you can't, an email is just not going to cut it, maybe you can do something like this. So you could say that I'm practicing what I'm preaching.
That's awesome. Well, you had mentioned to me when we were chatting just the other day that you, like I mentioned just a second ago, you live somewhat in New York. You're from Australia. You're in Berlin now, and I've seen your videos. You were hitchhiking to Amsterdam. You were doing all
correction.
kinds of
I attempted to hitchhike to Amsterdam. That was a dismal failure.
That's right. So you're traveling the world, and tell us tell us what you do now, aside from the podcast, what brings in revenue for you, and then how did you get started at that? Because I think a lot of people, including myself, would, even if we have the ability, would really love the ability to, I'd love to go to Costa Rica and hop on their Wi-Fi or just travel the world and like you're doing. Tell us what you're doing now and how you got started doing that.
Okay, so just a quick backstory. I was living in Melbourne in Australia up until February this year, and I was working as an architect, and I quit my job in February and I moved to New York City in March, and I was there for a few months, and then when it hit summer, I came over to Europe, and I've been hanging out in the Netherlands, and as you mentioned, now I'm in Berlin, and I'll be soon back in the US to go to the podcast conference in Dallas, which I'm really excited about. But I just want to be completely transparent with everyone and say that, okay, I've only been doing this for a few months now, and it's something I have to keep reminding myself as well. And it was definitely a leap of faith that I took. And I was fortunate to be in the position that I had been working for a number of years. I'd been saving like crazy. I didn't really know what for, but I knew that I was saving for something. And when I came to this realization that, I want to help other people and I want to start this thing and I want to travel and I want to see the world, that's when I realized, you know what? That's what I've been saving for this whole time. I just haven't realized it. So I did have a decent amount of funds to sort of get me going and help me out with that. And since then, I've been generating income through doing some talks, doing some lectures, mostly for universities. And I've found that, webinars are actually pretty cool. You can actually say to people, hey, I can, would you be interested in doing in a program that covers these topics? Would you be interested in a webinar? People can ask questions throughout the webinar. We can record it. We can make it available to participants afterwards. And I found that people are quite receptive to that, which is quite cool.
I've never done one of those. I've attended a couple, and everybody says, they're great for conversions. They're great for people getting on your list or signing up for a training course or a product, but I've never done one.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I want to continue to do and learn from. And I know there are a lot of tactics and strategies that you can apply in order to get conversions and that sort of thing. So that's something right now that I'm working on and I want to do a lot more of in the future.
Now, did you learn that through your marketing background? Or actually, well, you said you used to do architecture, and your podcast is to help design students. Can I assume that that's architectural design students?
Yeah, well, it's any design student really, because what I discovered was that the stuff that I'm teaching, it really applies to any area of design. And I mean, really, it applies to anyone really who wants to really improve themselves and do well and get a job, because a lot of students, when they graduate, they all face this problem, like, what do I do next? And so many people don't actually think about what they're doing next until after they graduate. And even for someone who's working already and they want a change of directions or they want to move up, get that big promotion, being able to communicate well is just critical if you want to be able to do that. But, as they say, sorry, I'm just going to
go ahead.
Add in, like, everyone knows that, when you start something, you got to have a niche. You got to have a specific audience in mind. And for me, I thought, well, I want to help people like me, or like people who like myself and my friends.
So I was on a podcast. As of right now, it hasn't aired yet. It's from a guy named Dean Allen down there in Australia. And his podcast is the Book Pals podcast. He was telling me, he used the term tradies, which you might be familiar. People are tradesmen, people who have been trained to do a specific thing, like a mechanic or an electrician or something like that. How does the stuff that you're talking about, which I think is really interesting and creative, because I'm not all that creative, I'm a little too shy and think, how, just out of curiosity, how would some of these tactics go and work with a market that goes through an apprenticeship period and things like that? Does it apply to that, or is it more like what you might see here in the United States? The U.S. is my biggest market. Australia, I think, is actually in the top 5. So
wow, yeah. Look,
I was surprised too.
Look, a lot of the stuff that I talk about applies to any workplace situation, really. And I mean, with my audience, they are designers. So I mean, I should have mentioned before, when I say design, like, they could be interior design, fashion design, graphic design, web design, all that sort of stuff. And a lot of these people they're very good at what they do. They're very talented at design, but they have a problem actually communicating those creative ideas in a way that someone from a non-design background can understand. So if we were to apply this to, say, a tradesperson or a tradie, as we would say, it would still apply in that when they're communicating with each other, or if an electrician has to explain to someone, this is how it's going to work, and we're going to have this problem, so we might have to look at this and look at that. Someone, like, for example, I don't really understand anything about that sort of thing. So if I were to hire an electrician who could effectively explain the problem and what needed to be done, and this is why it's going to take this long or cost this much, that's going to be much better for me as a client or customer than if they were to just, if it just didn't make any sense to me. So it definitely applies.
I just checked, and Australia is actually number 3. So United States, United Kingdom, and then Australia, and then Canada. So I didn't know I had so many people listening down there. But yeah, Dean was like, so he's like, if I was in a bar and I needed a sparky, is that Australian? Is that something?
A sparky.
Yeah, for an electrician. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, he said sparky. I learned my vocabulary just grew when I talked to him. It was the same day I talked to somebody in the UK, and I was learning all kinds of new words.
Did you speak to Dean in the morning or the arvo?
The arvo. I spoke. It was like 6 a.m. his time.
Okay,
So
so the morning.
yeah, oh yeah, very very morning for him. But I think that was like 4 or 5 in the afternoon for me. But he said it was perfect for him because the internet was real bad where he was. So, Dean, if you're listening to this, hopefully it's okay that I'm sharing.
He
sharing
sounds
this.
like he's from Queensland. No,
maybe,
sorry,
maybe.
Dean.
But he said that when everybody else started to wake up, his internet got really slow. So
Oh, wow.
I don't know where that was. Of course, we don't have a whole lot to brag about here in the States where our internet sucks compared to other places in the world. But anyway, he got on really early, and it was a nice, comfortable afternoon for me. But anyway, so I'm glad to know that your techniques even work for the apprenticeship. I didn't know that the apprenticeship model was still being used to such prevalence there. And what I like about what you were saying is it allows you to stand out. If you're in a graduating class of 1,000 people, that means you have 999 other people that you're competing against for a job. And you do have to stand out. Now, as podcasters, Christina, you and I know that we have to think more of an abundance versus a scarcity mindset. But when you're focused specifically on jobs and working for somebody else, you are competing against your fellow classmates. And that's what I love about your videos is they're really funny. You put a lot of personality into them. And I don't know if you know Amy Schmidauer. She does the Savvy Sexy Social brand. And I had her on my show last week, empoweredpodcast.com/44, I think. But I talked to her about putting her personality into her business, into her videos, and into her podcast. And that's what I like about what your videos show the world. And even not the ones getting people on your podcast, but you get to see an insight into who Christina is.
Yeah, and well, thank you for that. It's actually had a much bigger impact than I expected as well. And I think just showing your personality and showing that authenticity really helps with other things. So, for example, when I do a bit of couch surfing, and whenever I approach someone on couch surfing to say, hey, can I surf on your couch? I go, if you want to get an idea of my personality, here's my YouTube channel. And then I'll get an email from them going, oh, okay, I watched you doing 100 burpees, or I watched you packing your life into, one little bag. And they're like, okay, you seem all right, And it also works on, I think I connected with someone on LinkedIn, and he wrote back to me and he said, I just had to check your videos to make sure you're not a robot. And I was really impressed with your 100 burpees or something like that. So it definitely helps when you're just connecting with people online, in general, I've found.
Has that ever backfired? Someone saw your video and like, yeah, never mind.
Well, you know what? If that was the reaction, then I'd be like, you know what? I don't want to be connected with you anyway.
Great answer. I think I was having a conversation with my wife Ashley just a couple days ago, and I was like, I still censor part of my personality online on my blog and on my podcast. Just I don't know. I don't let it all. You don't get the full Ellery effect unless you meet me in person. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. I don't know.
Ooh, I look forward to meeting you then.
Uh-oh.
We'll see. We'll see. No, I think I know some people don't censor themselves at all. I'll admit that I censor myself a little bit because, you kind of have to. I guess you don't have to, but I choose to. But yeah, I understand. I understand where you're coming from.
It's more smoothing out the edges.
Yeah.
I'm very sarcastic, and the term deadpan, like Seinfeld type humor, was used to describe me in a job interview.
Really?
And the guy didn't want to hire me, and then 2 years later, I was sales rep of the year. So suck it. But yeah, I'm a lot of people don't quite understand me, and I'm rarely in a bad mood, and I'm rarely grumpy, but I'll say something that I think is funny, but I won't smile, and you just kind of have to get it, and I have to push myself to smile just so people don't think, man, that guy's an ass.
I'm going to take note of that.
Yeah,
He
so if
doesn't
I
hate
say
you, Christina.
something.
He's just joking.
Oh, speaking of which, we're getting sidetracked, but this is fun. Did you see that thing on Facebook a couple weeks ago, like the resting bitch face?
I did not. I tend to not look at too much crap on the internet. I try not to. But I know what you mean by resting.
Say from the girl who has a podcast and a YouTube channel and was just talking about LinkedIn.
That wasn't Superwoman, was it?
No, the resting bitch face was this video about these girls that whenever they're not smiling, they're just no expression on their face. They look kind of mean, and that I feel like that's me. And like, there's nothing wrong. It's just that's how my face rests. So if you Google resting bitch face, you might. It's really funny. Well, I sent it over to Ashley, and I was like, I totally have this, and she's like, you do. And it's like, it's nothing's wrong. It's just that's how I look. That's how I think.
You're the person who, when I'm giving a talk and I'm looking out to the audience and trying to gauge my audience's reaction, like, you're the person who I look at and go, oh God, I suck.
Maybe, and I won't apologize for everyone. But if that's the case, it just means we're interested. So, well, you picked up a couple months ago. This was probably 3 or 4 months ago. You said you left Australia. You decided that you didn't want to be tied down to. I think you said you're in Melbourne. And what made you decide to travel the world? What gave you that idea? Was it a point in your life? Was it a point in your career? What made you pick up and go?
Well, I've always loved traveling, and I've always wanted to just work overseas and work somewhere else. One thing I do love is America, and I'm not just saying that to flatter you and make all your listeners go, yay, we love her. But, Mel, like, it's very different. Like, when starting up this business and starting the podcast and everything, I find that in America, people just get me. They get my enthusiasm. They get, like, my passion for this. And I like, when I came over to America, I told people what I was doing. They're all like, they're so encouraging and going, wow, that's awesome, so cool. Oh, you should, meet my buddy. He does this, and I can help you out with that. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And then, like, back home, I would tell people, oh, I'm doing this, and they go, oh, okay, cool. And I mean, it wasn't discouraging, like, they weren't dragging me down, but it wasn't like the most encouraging reaction. So I truly believe that, your success depends on the people that you surround yourself with. And I thought, you know what, New York is full of creative people, entrepreneurial people, and they just get what it's all about. So I thought, if I'm going to really progress this thing and make connections, then that's where I want to be.
I wish I had some Coming to America theme song right now. Theme music.
I'm trying to think of it. I don't even know, like, what's the Captain America theme song?
Captain. I don't know. I don't know, but I think, I don't know if it's by Lee Greenwood. It's like, Coming to America. That one? Yeah, I'm not known for my singing. So you've got the podcast, you're traveling the world. What's coming up next for Christina? You mentioned podcast movement. I think you told me you were gonna make a brief trip down to Austin. What's next for you in the business besides podcast movement? What are you gonna do next?
Besides podcast movement, well, after my stint in Texas, I'm actually pretty open with my plan, and that is and that's the whole beauty of this trip. The only plan I had was to go to New York and then leave for a bit, and I didn't know what I was doing after that. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to be open to whatever opportunity presents itself. And since then, I was invited to go to Podcast Movement. So if I had a fixed plan after that, then I wouldn't have been able to go. And it's opportunities like this that have really made this whole trip worthwhile. It's just been incredible.
Do you have an apartment in New York, or is that the couch surfing thing you were talking about?
I was house sitting there for a relative. So I was fortunate to have that opportunity there as well. Otherwise, and I'll be honest, otherwise I don't know if I'd be able to afford the rent there, because it's pretty crazy.
I don't think anybody can actually afford
That's the thing. Like, yeah, my goal is to, be making enough money one day so I can go and actually, live there for longer.
Well, I was in Miami a couple weeks ago, and just it's relatively expensive there, all the way up to the Fort Lauderdale area and everything, where I was visiting friends and stuff. And Ashley, again, my wife, and I went to an Indian food restaurant here in Round Rock called Tarka, and I was looking at just the price of food, the price of drinks, and I was like, it's 20 or 30% less here than just in Miami. And I've driven through New York once 15 years ago, and you're right, it's so much, things are so expensive. So if you come to Texas and you're like, man, why is this Coke only $2 instead of $6? You might never leave here.
You know what's interesting, actually? When I went to New York, the cost of the food and the drink and going out and everything is the same as Melbourne. So I was like, why is everyone complaining about how expensive it is? This is just normal. It's pretty crazy. Like, Melbourne is really expensive.
Well, I remember I was up there at the, I think it was the Mayflower Hotel in D.C., this really old, like 200-year-old hotel or something. And it was like $5 to get a Coke or Pepsi or whatever, and they didn't give you free refills. I was like, this is done. Here in Texas, we've got the big gulps, and it's unlimited free refills. And this Tarka place has a mango tea. It's insanely good, and just free refills of that. It's just a different culture. Texas is. I've traveled. I've been to California. California is stupid expensive. So was Miami. Some beautiful places and beautiful sites, but the cost of living here and the economy in Texas is pretty amazing. So like I said, you might not ever live. And Dallas and Austin are two of the best places in the country to live, as far as like job opportunities or real estate investments. There's when you look at like top 50 cities in the United States, I think 3 or 4 of them are in Texas. So.
And welcome to the US Travel Show with Ellery Wells and Christina Canters. Today we're talking about best states to live in.
That could very easily be put at the very intro of this show.
Texas! You know what I'm looking forward to, actually? I'm looking forward to the meat.
like
barbecue, man. Barbecue.
Oh, man. Like,
do you ever see... some of them ribs, y'all.
Did you ever see Tropic Thunder?
Oh, I've seen that about 10 times. I love that movie.
Oh, let's go throw some shrimp on the barbie. What do you mean, you people? I love that movie. It's so funny. But when you said barbecue, it got me thinking
Mother
about
Nature
Tropic
just
Thunder.
shit her pants.
It's a great movie. So yeah, you're looking forward to the barbecue. We do have better I think in general, we have better food in Texas than pretty much anywhere else. And I've tried food all over the world. I've never been to Australia, but I've been to a few places in Europe and all of the United States, and it has more flavor here. We have better steaks. We have better barbecue. I think our gap there, Christina, though, is seafood. We have good seafood, but it's smaller.
Dare I say vegetables as well?
No.
You're like, what are vegetables?
No, we don't.
That's not a food group.
We've got a lot of farms here, but I think
there's beef, there's pork, there's chicken, there's corn, and there's big gulp, and those are the food groups.
Yeah, that'll work. No, there's a lot of farmland here in Texas, but I think it's largely cattle. I mean, I don't know how much about. Well, here's a glimpse at Texas pride, and people who don't live in Texas, they might have already tuned out by now. But we take Texas history like 3 or 4 times before we even get out of high school for 12th grade, and you don't do that in other states. But they took cattle drives and all that stuff from South Texas all the way up to Wyoming and almost into Canada. That was our export before. I don't know how long ago that was, but. Cattle, yeah. So the vegetable stuff, I think that's more north, like Midwest, corn and stuff. But we probably have all that here in Texas. This is a big state. I think Texas is bigger than all of Australia. What do you think about that?
I know you think that you are, yeah, for sure.
That's not true. I don't know. On my map, Texas is bigger than pretty much everything else. So, Well, Christina, being on the Empowered podcast, you might have guessed that we would talk about the word empower and empowering other people. So, what does the word empower mean to you?
Oh, it means believing in yourself and believing that you can achieve things. And I think having that knowledge is just so empowering. Actually, I do have one example of something that truly empowered me. It happened a couple of years, maybe 3 years ago. I actually, I ended a long-term relationship, and for me that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life, because I had my head was screaming at me to do one thing, but then my gut was telling me to do another, and I couldn't. I was literally walking, like pacing up and down, because I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. No, I'm going to do this. Oh no, but I have to. No, but that doesn't feel right. And in the end, I just had to trust my gut and go with my instinct. And as soon as I made that decision, I just felt incredibly just relieved, and I learnt that I could trust myself with these big decisions. And for me, that was one of the most empowering things I've ever experienced.
Do you think coming to the realization that you could trust yourself was a big turning point?
Oh, massive. Because up until that point, I sort of depended on good friends, and every time I had a big decision to make, I'd be like, oh, what do you think? What do you think? Should I do this? Should I do that? And I always, listened to other people and got their opinions. But for this, I knew I had to make the decision. It was like no one else could make this for me. And it was one of the biggest decisions I've ever had to make in my life. And so after that decision, I thought, I felt like I could do anything. I knew that, anytime I'm facing a big challenge or decision or choice or something, I know that I can depend on myself to make the right choice.
I read a study several months ago, and it said, your brain gets its information from what it reads, what it hears, and things like that. But your gut takes in just feelings and senses and smells, and I think the article talked about just changes in subtle air pressure of tension. Your gut can feel all kinds of things that maybe our conscious brain doesn't necessarily notice. And we should trust our gut more, but that's kind of, I'm more of an analytical, scientific type, and I just wonder if our guts, check yes or no, but do they yes provide us good information, or no provide us bad information? I don't know, but it worked out. It worked out for you, so that's good.
Yeah, and like looking back as well on other decisions that I've made, or decisions that I made based on what my head was telling me, I look back now and I go, yeah, well, things have changed, and that was based on a decision that I made with my head. For example, I remember writing down some professional goals for myself, and I wrote down this goal saying, I'm going to be the director of an international design firm. I was like, I'm going to aim high, like this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the boss. And I wrote that down. But something within me kind of told me that's probably not going to happen, or that's not you. But I wrote it down anyway because I thought that that's what I wanted. And since then, like this whole process that I've gone through and discovering what my purpose really is and what it is that I really love to do, I can now look back on that and go, yeah, definitely was not listening to my gut at that point. But I think at the time I just didn't know any better.
Well, what's your goal now?
My goal is to be able to live location independent and to be making enough money to support my lifestyle and to secure my future, and to be doing what I love, that is helping other people become the best that they can be.
And here's the hard question. If someone has a similar goal to that, and I think people who listen to podcasts probably have at least some degree of wanting to do something similar, what kind of steps are you taking to reach that goal? I told you it was a tough question. It'd be tough for me.
Well, I mean, there are definite steps that I'm carrying out. And I mean, I love have you listened to, is it Earl Nightingale's Stranger Secret?
I don't think so.
Oh, you got to check it out. It's amazing. It's basically a condensed version of Think and Grow Rich. It's like a 30-minute. It's like one example of sort of the first podcast ever. It's a 30-minute lecture. You can find it on YouTube. It's pretty easy. It's called The Stranger Secret. And in that, and it's all about how it's based on the idea that we become what we think about. And and Earl Nightingale, he defines success as the this isn't going to be like word for word, but it's the deliberate progressive realization towards a worthy goal. So he says, success isn't necessarily what you've achieved. It's if you are taking definitive, deliberate steps towards achieving a goal, then that's already success. And for me, like, I don't actually know exactly where I'll end up. I do have this goal, but, things might change along the way. But I do know that I am taking these steps to, working towards that. And so to me, I feel like I'm already, successful in that sense. So to answer your question, the steps that I'm taking, I am just creating as much valuable content as I can. I'm connecting with my audience. I'm trying to make as many connections online and just learn. Like, learning is a huge thing. I'm learning so much. I've learned the value in investing in yourself. I've been going to conferences. That's where all my money goes. Conferences and doing online courses. That's where my money goes. And I don't buy clothes. I really want a new computer, but I have to wait. I'd rather go to Podcast Movement and spend outrageous amounts to stay in that hotel than buy a new, iPad or whatever. So, I'm prioritizing my spending. And so just that, being open to learning and being open to new opportunities is another big thing. Like this podcast stuff, like these videos, I didn't intend on all this stuff to happen. I didn't intend on having new followers and everything just from one video I made for one podcaster. That was just more like, I just want to get this person on my podcast. I didn't expect all these other things to happen. So, but I've taken these opportunities and and now, look, I'm going to this conference. I'm working on a course actually on helping people get more creative with their interview invites, how to connect with people. So it's just led to all these things that I had no intention of even doing. So I think being open to new opportunities and seeing the ones that are worth taking is just so important if you want to, work towards that goal.
What conferences are you going besides Podcast Movement? What's up on your neck, or what's after that on your list?
After that, I'm going to do you know the Tropical MBA podcast?
Is that Natalie Sissons?
No, it's Dan Andrews and Ian Schoen. I think that's how you say his name.
Okay, I've heard of it. I've heard of her, but I didn't know who. I've never listened to it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's one of my favorite podcasts, and it's all about achieving this digital nomad lifestyle. So location independent, running your online business from anywhere, sort of thing. And I'm part of their online mastermind group or community, and they're having a conference in Bangkok in October. So I'm going to be in Asia for sort of September, October, or around there. So that's the next big one that's coming up. And I went to Social Media Marketing World earlier this year, and that was very cool. I'd like to go back to that one. So we'll see what happens.
You're going to be coming to New Media Expo whenever they announce dates and locations for, I don't even know when. So are you going to the next New Media Expo?
Would that be around January?
You would. Well, it was January 2 through 4 in 2014, so earlier this year. But I don't know that they've announced dates, so I don't know if it's even going to be in January. Okay. They had talked about moving it because this year the East Coast or something got a lot of snow, and so even some of the speakers were snowed in, and they're thinking about changing different time of year. But they change it, and then all of a sudden it's going to be hurricane season, so people are going to be grounded in the southeast, or I don't know, but I enjoyed going this past year. It was it was like pouring fuel on my business and my connection. So that's why I guess I'll always have a special place in my heart for New Media Expo, even though podcast movement's coming up and things like that. But it's kind of my first big one, and I'll always remember it.
Well, Social Media Marketing World was my first big conference as well, and that was super exciting. I flew over to San Diego from New York for that, and a friend of mine and I, we actually got dressed up in costume and did some silly things there, and that was a bit of fun as well. But that was so cool. I got to meet Cliff Ravenscraft, and I did his podcast course last year, so it was great to meet him and meet other online friends as well. So yeah, totally love conferences.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like the best thing that you could do for your business or for in motive to follow your dreams, and 0 being I'd never go again. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate going to conferences?
Oh, I'd have to say 9.
Good.
Because I'd only give it a 10 if I went there and I was instantaneously a millionaire. I don't know.
So pretty high there.
Pretty high. It's much more the connections you make. Like I had the digital the virtual pass where you can access all the lectures afterwards, and I have not looked at a single lecture since then. But the connections I've made have been amazing. I'm actually staying with someone who I met, like the friend that I'm staying with in Austin, I actually met at Social Media Marketing World. So I'm like, hey, that's pretty cool.
Interesting. I probably don't know who that person is, but I probably should find out at some point and meet them, because I'm always looking for people in the area. And I feel like sometimes I'm on an island down here. I know a lot of people in Dallas that do podcasting. I now know 20 or 30 people in South Florida that do podcasting. I know two people in the North Austin area that do podcasting, in addition to myself. So
you think that's bad, like being in Austin? This is another reason why. I mean, like I said before, why I left Australia. Melbourne. I mean, Australia has a very small podcast listenership, I suppose. And moving to New York, I was able to connect with other podcasters and work with them and collaborate, and that was really cool.
Well, before I ask my last couple questions, you had mentioned signing up and taking some of these online courses. How do you find courses to take, and how were you marketed to?
How was I marketed to with the courses?
Yeah, because I've got a training course. It's under $500, but it shows you every step of the way how to start an online business and distribute digital products, sell them all over the world. So anything from helping you create the product to saving it as a file, selling it, taking payment, putting it into your bank account, all of that stuff. And one of the struggles that I have is finding the people. I talk to people like you, Christina, all the time who that's exactly what they want to do, but marketing to them or getting this in front of them, getting them to sign up has been a struggle for me. So I'm curious what has been successful to get you to sign up for some of these other courses so I could do it with my own. Yeah.
Well, with Cliff's course, I think I found that through I just found that through his website, and then I found him through Pat Flynn. And I was kind of at this point where I was like, I really just want to get this podcast up and running. And I think I listened to a few of Cliff's podcasts and I was like, yeah, he sounds like the sort of person I'd want to learn from. So I was a listener of his podcast already. I have heard that webinars, I mean, as we were talking about before, webinars can be really, really beneficial for that. I attended one of Andrew Warner's webinars. He does the Mixergy podcast, and his webinar was all about how to interview guests for your podcast and that sort of thing. And then at the end of that, he was plugging a course as well. and I've had to kind of hold off on courses, so I'm not really signing up for any more at the moment. But I've heard that can be quite effective as well. But I think getting it out there through your podcast would be quite good, because I mean, as we all know with podcasts, like when people are get to know you, when they're listening to you, they're more likely to trust you and more likely to then sign up for other stuff that you have. I actually had one lady email me saying, "Hi, I've been listening to your podcast and I'm waiting for you to release a product so I can buy it."
Oh, nice.
I'm like, I don't even know you, but that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think part of, and I don't want to say it's a problem. I did a rebranding in April. I changed my domain, changed my Twitter, changed everything, and I didn't really change the topics that I was writing and podcasting about. But before April, I hadn't really been talking a whole lot about online business and entrepreneurship. I was mostly leadership, personal development, personal branding, things like that. And so I think for me, part of my struggle is that's not something, it's something that I knew about this whole time, but it's not something that I had been talking about. And so I don't think I was necessarily seen as an authority on those subjects. And so when I came out with the course, it's been a very slow growth period, although all the feedback that I get from people going through it and checking out the modules has been good. But I'm terrible at marketing. I'm good at sales, but bad at marketing. If we were on the phone and we're, the uncovering the need and figuring out, how to meet that need, all that kind of stuff I can do, but I'm terrible at ads and Facebook ads and some of those other things. So like I said, I'm always looking for ways to get better. And that goes back to what you were saying about always be learning something. And I'm always trying to figure out, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, but I was curious to learn what has worked, because I know a lot of people who have gone through podcasting A to Z with Cliff. I just spoke with Carrie Oberbrunner yesterday, who does his book is Day Job to Dream Job, and he's got a couple of different courses that go along with that, and always trying to figure out how I can tweak my message and how I deliver it and be better. So that's why I asked that question, not to be like, hey, you should sign up for my course.
Have you considered doing a Udemy course?
I am aware of what they are, but no, I've never really used Udemy or Lynda or any of those other things. So I don't know if there's like a price ceiling, or I don't know.
No, you can. I've been looking into it, and that's probably the platform I'll be using for my course. Because if you actually if someone actually purchases through your website to Udemy, you actually get all the proceeds. They don't take a cut for that. But if someone finds your course through Udemy, so they're already in Udemy and then they stumble upon your course and then they sign up, then I think Udemy takes about half. But then Udemy has a huge audience, like a huge already established audience that are there, they're ready to learn, they're looking for courses to do. So, and there's nothing stopping you from actually creating a slightly different version of your course or whatever to then have on your own website, but then having, a similar course or a slightly, different version or whatever hosted on Udemy.
Interesting. Yeah, I may explore that because I like additional distribution methods. That's why I've got a book on my site and on Amazon for that reason. And my course could very easily be packaged almost like in a DVD or something. Put all of the videos, all of the audio. There's text only modules, only a couple of those though, but my course could easily be packaged into maybe something that I could do. I'll have to look at that. If you're listening to this and you know about Udemy, you have put something on there and had success or not had success, I would love for you to tell me about it, what your experience was, and maybe I could learn from you about how to do that. A couple last questions for you, Christina. How do you unwind and relax? Although you don't seem like the type that gets too opposite of relaxed. What's uptight?
Too uptight. I'm not uptight, but I do work a crazy amount. And I mentioned to you before we started recording this, it's 6 p.m. now. Well, we started this at 5 p.m. and I haven't even left my apartment. So I need to do something about that. But one thing that is non-negotiable for me is exercise. And I have to get out and move every single day. And that's a real stress release for me. And I've been doing that for as long as I can remember. And so that's what I love doing. And I love cooking as well, cooking and eating, and then also like to blog a bit as well on, just about life, that sort of thing.
What do you like to cook?
Do you
have a specialty?
I have a few specialties. This isn't technically cooking, but whenever I visit someone, I like to make them a green smoothie. Have you ever had a green smoothie, Ellery? Considering you're in Texas, probably not.
Well, now that's just mean.
No, that's not out of line.
I was gonna say un-American, but we have vegetables here. It's not like all we eat is barbecue.
Oh,
although that would be a good diet: steaks and barbecue.
No, I'm sure in Austin there's plenty of green smoothies going around. It's quite hipster there, I've heard. But basically yes. you blend like banana with some coconut milk and a nice handful of spinach and some cinnamon and maybe some coconut, and you blend that all up, and it's this beautiful, thick, delicious, healthy smoothie. And you drink.
It sweet?
Yes, it's sweet. It's sweet.
Okay.
And you drink that, and your skin basically just explodes with, goodness.
I'm looking forward to my skin exploding. That's what I want.
It's more like glowing. I don't know what a glowing explosion would look like, but if you can imagine something like that, that's what a green smoothie is like. And I introduced, so I went to Holland, and they don't really eat many vegetables there either. And I went there and I introduced some people I met there to green smoothies, and they love them. So drink your greens, everyone. It's good for you.
Do you know Farnoosh Brock?
I actually reviewed her smoothie book on my blog, and I interviewed her as well for that. So yes, I do know Farnoosh, and she's lovely, and she actually rekindled my love for smoothies, because I stopped drinking them, and then she sent me her book, and I read it, and I was like, and the way she writes, I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to start drinking smoothies again. So I started having them every single day, and now I don't have a blender, so it's like, solid spinach for me now, but yes. Definitely a fan of the smoothies.
Which I think she was my very first interview. I think she was actually my second podcast, and and I think she was my first expo. I know juicing has been around a long time, but I didn't really know what juicing was, other than it sounded like shooting up steroids for football or something, but which I now know it's just blending fruit. So,
but it is a nutrition injection.
And we can all use more nutrition. One question before my final question: what was the last movie you saw?
The last movie I saw was, I haven't seen a movie in a really long time. That's really sad. Like at the movies, or just like on my laptop?
Either one.
Oh my goodness. Actually, I saw, this is before I left New York, actually. The one that sticks in my mind is Divergent.
What'd you think? Without spoilers.
It taught me some incredible lessons on fear, actually. And when they're in the hallucinations, the way that the lead character Tris, the way she gets out of them is she tells herself, this isn't real, and she somehow makes it through. And that reminded me that we often tend to make up these fears in our head, and we have to tell ourselves, are these fears actually real, or are we just making it up? And I have to remind myself of that every time I think, is anyone even listening to my podcast? Does anyone even care? And I have to just think, no, you're just making this up, Christina. It's fine. And then I get a nice iTunes review, and that puts me at ease.
And that actually might take the place of the intro instead of the talking about Texas. But I like that. Is this a real fear or not? So that's a good advice and something we should think about.
Yeah, as entrepreneurs, we all go through that, and it's one of the big challenges, I think, learning to overcome that.
Absolutely. And my final question, Christina, is what is one tip or piece of advice that you can give people who are just starting out? Maybe they want to do, what do you call it, a location independent business. What's one tip or piece of advice that you can give people who are just starting?
For people who are just starting out and want to become location independent, I would say get a lightweight laptop, because you know what? Mine's just been really annoyingly heavy, and it really helps when you pack light. So traveling light, I would say.
There you go, a very practical
That's a very practical
tip.
one. If you want something a little bit more enlightening, I would say to definitely, I mentioned this earlier, find the people who are doing what you want to do and surround yourself with them. Being part of this Tropical MBA online community has been incredible. Like, I sit down with one person from that group and I chat to them for half an hour, and it blows my mind because they're doing stuff and they're giving me ideas that I would have never have thought of, and they're just, these people. I'm talking to people who are way more successful than me, and it just helps to lift me up and gives me inspiration. So definitely surround yourself with the right people, the people who are doing what you want to do.
Awesome. Cue the Josh Groban.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is one of those times where I've been very sarcastic. I'm over here laughing. I'm just thinking of the "You Lift Me Up" Josh Groban song, and I'm taking away from the power of what you just said, of surrounding yourself with people who are doing what you want to do, who are further along the path than you are, and the importance of masterminds. So I didn't mean to take away from the importance.
No, not at all. Let's we can launch into a bit of song. Let's see. You're flying without wings. Yeah, and then we can go into let's just do more Westlife, yeah? You lift me up when something on my... Oh, God, I didn't think that through very well, did I?
Well, that's about as far as I got in my head, too. I don't remember the rest of that song, but anyway, Christina, I know our time is short, and you need to go and check out the Berlin nightlife since you've been indoors all day. But if someone wanted to reach out and connect with you, or just say thank you for being on the Empowered Podcast today, where can we send them?
Sure. Well, you can check out the website at designdrawspeak.com, or you can send me a tweet. My handle is at CJ Canters. That is CJ Canters.
Awesome. Instead of Canters.
Yeah, look, I've actually had some people say, "Oh, you don't sound Australian, you sound American." I'm like, that's because no one understands me if I don't speak American. So I have to pronounce my name. I'm Christina Canters, but I do teach people how to say Melbourne correctly. I'm not backing up on that. I'm not turning into Melbourne, because that's
Melbourne.
Very good, Ellery.
Awesome.
How to speak Aussie 101.
Well, text is easy. You just got to say, well, I'm about to stereotype Texas, and I hate how Texas is stereotyped. No, we don't all wear cowboy boots.
Yes, you
no,
do.
We don't all
yes, you do.
wear cowboy hats, and we don't ride horses to work.
You're wearing one in your profile picture right here. I'm looking at you right now. I can see it.
Yeah. Exactly. Anyway, Christina, thanks for hanging out with me today, sharing your story with the listeners of the Empowered Podcast. I can't wait to see you in a couple weeks at Podcast Movement, and thank you again. Thanks so much, Ellery. Let's get some meat, y'all! It's something about accents that you don't hear every day. They just fascinate me. I was talking to someone from the UK just yesterday, a guy named Matthew, and it's just cool to hear how other people talk. Anyway, being location independent is something that I strive to achieve. You know, I work on my laptop. I can carry a microphone with me. I could work from almost anywhere, if that is something that you are striving toward, if that is something that you have as a goal of yours, I really want you to consider going to empoweredpodcast.com/expertise. My training course will show you how to do everything that Christina and I talked about. How to set up your website, how to get things going, how to come up with your first product, how to produce that first product. Just all of these things that allow you to kick the job to the curb or just start something on the side so that you can ramp up, so that you don't have to make a light switch change like I did. You don't have to make the same mistakes that I did. You can make your process smooth and make it a transition. I highly encourage you to check that out, empoweredpodcast.com/expertise. And if you are not already on my email list, that is absolutely the best way to stay in touch with me, get connected with my guests, and find out what they are up to. Plus, I give away free stuff on occasion and would love to have you as part of that community. Go to empoweredpodcast.com/awesome. If you're on the treadmill right now or you're in the car, just remember those two words, expertise and awesome. Those will take you everywhere that you need to go on the website, empoweredpodcast.com/expertise and /awesome. I'm your host, Ellery Wells. We'll see you next week.